Hello, we're here. An hour late because I had to work late, but we're here. Give me a minute to get sorted and give folks a second to trickle in case they're coming, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we're probably just about ready to get started. Maybe the music's a little loud. Turn it down just a smidge. Okay. Unfortunately, I had to work late, which is why I am late, which means I will only have time to read one chapter tonight. That being said, we're on chapter 25, and the remaining chapters, let's see. The book ends after chapter 30, and 30 is very short, so we should be done soon. I think I might move on to some more Clark Ashton Smith or H.P. Lovecraft after this. I'll post about it later this week, and we'll figure it out. But for now, let's get down to reading. All right, chapter 25. The dike of secrecy had broken. Several dauntless Dutch boys were swept away by the raging tide. The tide swept them right out of Texarkana to their country estates, where they became unavailable for comment. Others remained at their posts and staunchly tried to plug new leaks. But the fall of certain isotopes in the wind created a universal byword spoken on street corners and screamed by banner headlines, "Lucifer is fallen!" The Minister of Defense, his uniform immaculate, his makeup unsmeared, and his equanimity unruffled, again faced the journalistic fraternity. This time, the press conference was televised throughout the Christian coalition. Lady Reporter. Your Lordship appears rather calm in the face of the facts. 2 violations of international law, both defined by treaty as warlike acts, have recently occurred. Doesn't that worry the War Ministry at all? Defense Minister. Madam, as you very well know, we do not have a war ministry here. We have a defense ministry. And as far as I know, only one violation of international law has occurred. Would you mind acquainting me with the other? Which one are you not acquainted with? The disaster in Ituwan or the warning shot over the far South Pacific? Surely, Madam intends nothing seditious, but your question seems to give comfort, if not credence, to the utterly false Asian charges that the so-called Ituwan disaster was the result of a weapon test by us and not by them. If it does, I invite you to throw me in jail. The question was based on a Near East neutralist account, which reported that the Ituwan disaster was the result of an Asian weapon test underground which broke free. The same account said that the Ituwan test was sighted from our satellites and immediately answered by a space-to-Earth warning shot southeast of New Zealand. But now that you suggest it, was the Ituwan disaster also the result of a weapon test by us? I recognize the journalistic requirement of objectivity, but to suggest that His Supremacy's government would deliberately violate... His Supremacy is an 11-year-old boy, and to call it his government is not only archaic, but a highly dishonorable, even cheap attempt to shift the responsibility for a full denial from your own... Moderator. Madam, please restrain the tenor of your... Overlook it. Madam, you have my full denial if you must dignify the fantastic charges. The so-called E21 disaster was not the result of a weapon test by us, nor do I have any knowledge of any other recent nuclear detonation. Thank you. I believe the editor of the Texarkana Star Insight has been trying to speak. Yes, thank you. I should like to ask, your lordship, what did happen in E21? We have no nationals in that area. We have had no observers there since diplomatic relations were broken during the last world crisis. I can, therefore, only rely upon indirect evidence and the somewhat conflicting neutralist accounts. That is to be understood. Very well, then. I gather there was a subsurface nuclear detonation in the megaton range, and it got out of hand. It was rather obviously a test of some sort, whether it was a weapon or, as some Asia fringe neutrals claim, an attempt to divert an underground river. It is clearly illegal, and adjoining countries are preparing a protest to the World Court. Is there any risk of war? I foresee none, but as you know, we have certain detachments of our armed forces which are subject to conscription by the World Court to enforce its decisions if needed. I foresee no such need, but I cannot speak for the court. Yes, but the Asian coalition has threatened an immediate all-out strike against our space installations if the court does not take action against us. What if the court is slow in acting? No ultimatum has been delivered. The threat was for Asian home consumption, as I see it, to cover their blunder in E21. How is your abiding faith in motherhood today, Lord Ragel? I hope motherhood has at least as much abiding faith in me as I have in motherhood. You deserve at least that much, I'm sure. The news conference, radiated from the relay satellite 22,000 miles from Earth, bathed most of the Western Hemisphere with the flickering VHF signal which carried such intelligence to the panelescent wall screens of the multitudes. One among the multitudes, Abbot Dom Zurchi, switched off the set. He paced for a while, waiting for Joshua, trying not to think, but not thinking proved impossible. Listen, are we helpless? Are we doomed to do it again and again and again? Have we no choice but to play the phoenix in an unending sequence of rise and fall? Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Carthage, Rome, the empires of Charlemagne and the Turk, ground to dust and plowed with salt. Spain, France, Britain, America, burned into the oblivion of the centuries, and again and again and again. Are we doomed to it, Lord, chained to the pendulum of our own mad clockwork, helpless to halt its swing? This time it will swing us clean to oblivion, he thought. The feeling of desperation passed abruptly when Brother Pat brought him the second telegram. The abbot ripped it open, read it at a glance, and chuckled. Brother Joshua here yet, brother? Waiting outside, Reverend Father. Send him in. Oh, brother, shut the door and turn on the silencer, then read this. Joshua glanced at the first telegram. An answer from New Rome. It came this morning, but turn on that silencer first. We've got things to discuss. Joshua closed the door and flipped a wall switch. Concealed loudspeakers squealed a brief protest. When the squealing stopped, the room's acoustic properties seemed suddenly changed. Dom Zurchi waved him toward a chair, and he read the first telegram in silence. No action whatever to be taken by you in connection with Quo Peregrinator Grex, he read aloud. You'll have to shout with that thing on, said the abbot, indicating the silencer. What? I was just reading. So the plan? It's cancelled? Don't look so relieved. That came this morning. This came this afternoon. The abbot tossed him the second telegram. Ignore earlier message of this date, quo peregrinator, to be reactivated immediately by request of Holy Father. Prepare cadre to leave within 3 days. Wait for confirming wire before departure. Report any vacancies in cadre organization. Begin conditional implementation of plan. Eric Cardinal Hofstraff, Vicar Apost Extraterrestrial Provinciae. The monk's face lost color. He replaced the telegram on the desk and sat back in his chair, lips tight together. You know what quo peregrinator is? I know what it is, Domni, but not in detail. Well, it started as a plan to send a few priests along with a colony group heading for Alpha Centauri, but that didn't work out because it takes bishops to ordain priests, and after the first generation of colonists, more priests would have to be sent, and so on. The question boiled down to an argument about whether the colonies would last, and if so, should provisions be made to ensure the apostolic succession on colony planets without recourse to Earth. You know what that would mean. Sending at least 3 bishops, I imagine. Yes, and that seemed a little silly. The colony groups have all been rather small, but during the last world crisis, quo peregrinator became an emergency plan for perpetuating the church on the colony planets, if the worst came to pass on Earth. We do have a ship. A star ship? No less, and we have a crew capable of managing it. Where? We have the crew right here. Here? At the Abbey? But who? Joshua stopped. His face grew even grayer than before. But Domni, my experience in space has been entirely in orbital vehicles, not in starships. Before Nancy died and I went to the sister... I know all about that. There are others with starship experience. You know who they are. There are even jokes about the number of ex-spacers that seem to feel a vocation to our order. Well, it's no accident, of course. And you remember when you were a postulant how you were quizzed about your experiences in space? Joshua nodded. You must also remember being asked about your willingness to go to space again if the order asked it of you. Yes. Then you were not wholly unaware that you were conditionally assigned to quo peregrinator if it ever came to pass? I guess I was afraid it was so, my lord. Afraid? Suspected, rather. Afraid, too, a little, because I've always hoped to spend the rest of my life in the order. As a priest? Well, I haven't yet decided. And quo peregrinator will not involve releasing you from your vows or mean abandoning the order. The order goes too? Zerchi smiled. Yes, and the whole memorabilia with it. The whole kit... Oh, you mean on microfilm. Where to? The Centaurus colony. How long would we be gone, Domni? If you go, you'll never come back. The monk breathed heavily and stared at the second telegram without seeming to see it. He scratched his beard and appeared bemused. 3 questions, said the abbot. Don't answer now, but start thinking about them, and think hard. First, are you willing to go? Second, do you have a vocation to the priesthood? And third, are you willing to lead the group? And by willing, I don't mean willing under obedience. I mean enthusiastic or willing to get that way. Think it over. You have 3 days to think, maybe less. Modern change had made but few incursions upon the buildings and the grounds of the ancient monastery. To protect the old buildings against the encroachment of a more impatient architecture, new additions had been made outside of the walls and even across the highway, sometimes at the expense of convenience. The old refectory had been condemned because of a buckling roof, and it was necessary to cross the highway in order to reach the new refectory. The inconvenience was somewhat mitigated by the culvert walk-under through which the brothers marched daily to meals. Centuries old, but recently widened, the highway was the same road used by pagan armies, pilgrims, peasants, donkey carts, nomads, wild horsemen out of the east, artillery, tanks, and 10-ton trucks. Its traffic had gushed or trickled or dripped according to age and season. Once before, long ago, there had been 6 lanes and robot traffic. Then the traffic had stopped, the paving had cracked, and sparse grass grew in the cracks after an occasional rain. Dust had covered it. Desert dwellers had dug up its broken concrete for the building of hovels and barricades. Erosion made it a desert trail crossing wilderness, but now there were 6 lanes and robot traffic, as before. "Traffic's light tonight," the abbot observed as they left the old main gate. "Let's hike across. That tunnel can be suffocating after a dust storm. Or don't you feel like dodging buses?" "Let's go," Brother Joshua agreed. Low-slung trucks with feeble headlights, useful only for warning purposes, sped mindlessly past them with whining tires and moaning turbines. With dish antenna, they watched the road, and with magnetic feelers they felt at the guiding strips of steel in the roadbed and were given guidance thereby as they rushed along the pink, fluorescent river of oiled concrete. Economic corpuscles in an artery of man, the behemoths charged heedlessly past the 2 monks who dodged them from lane to lane. To be felled by one of them was to be run over by truck after truck until a safety cruiser found the flattened imprint of a man on the pavement and stopped to clean it up. The autopilot's sensing mechanisms were better at detecting masses of metal than masses of flesh and bone. "This was a mistake," Joshua said as they reached the center island and paused for breath. "Look who's standing over there." The abbot peered for a moment, then clapped his forehead. "Mrs. Grayles! I clean forgot it's her night to prowl me down. Oh, she sold her tomatoes to the sisters' refectory, and now she's after me again." "After you? She was there last night and the night before, too. I thought she was waiting for a ride. What does she want from you?" "Oh, nothing, really. She's finished gypping the sisters on the price of tomatoes, and now she'll donate the surplus profit to me for the poor box. It's a little ritual. I don't mind the ritual. It's what comes afterward that's bad. You'll see." "Shall we go back?" "And hurt her feelings? Nonsense! She's seen us by now. Come on." They plunged into the thin stream of trucks again. The 2-headed woman and her 6-legged dog waited with an empty vegetable basket by the new gate. The woman crooned softly to the dog. 4 of the dog's legs were healthy legs, but an extra pair dangled uselessly at its sides. As for the woman, one head was as useless as the extra legs of the dog. It was a small head, a cherubic head, but it never opened its eyes. It gave no evidence of sharing in her breathing or her understanding. It lolled uselessly on one shoulder, blind, deaf, mute, and only vegetatively alive. Perhaps it lacked a brain, for it showed no sign of independent consciousness or personality. Her other face had aged, grown wrinkled, but the superfluous head retained the features of infancy, although it had been toughened by the gritty wind and darkened by the desert sun. The old woman curtsied at their approach, and her dog drew back with a snarl. "Evening, Father Zerchi," she drawled. "A most pleasant evening to yer, and to your brother." "Why, hello, Mrs. Grayles." The dog barked, bristled, and began a frenzied dance, feinting toward the abbot's ankles with fangs bared for slashing. Mrs. Grayles promptly struck her pet with the vegetable basket. The dog's teeth slashed the basket. The dog turned on its mistress. Mrs. Grayles kept it away with the basket, and after receiving a few resounding whacks, the dog retired to sit growling in the gateway. "What a fine mood Priscilla is in," Zerchi observed pleasantly. "Is she going to have pups?" "Big shrewdness, your honours," said Mrs. Grayles. "But's not the pup's motherful condition as makes her so, devil fredder, but 'tis at a man of mine. But 'tis that man of mine. He's witched the piteous pup, he has, for love of witchin', and it makes her feared of all. I beg your honour's shrewdness for her naughties." "It's all right. Well, good night, Mrs. Grayles." But escape proved not that easy. She caught at the abbot's sleeve and smiled her toothlessly irresistible smile. "A minute, father, only a minute for an old termater woman, if you have it to spare." Why, of course, I'd be glad." Joshua gave the abbot a sidelong grin and went over to negotiate with the dog concerning right-of-way. Priscilla eyed him with plain contempt. "Here, father, here," Mrs. Grayles was saying. "Take a little something for your box. Here." Coins rattled while Zerchi protested. "No, here, take of it, she insisted. "Oh, I know as how ye always say by fret, but I be not so poor as ye might think on me. And ye do good work. If ye don't take it, that no good man of mine'll have it from me, and do him the devil's work. Here, I sold my termaters and got my price near, and I bought my feed for the week, and even a play pretty for Rachel. I want you to have it. Here." "Oh, it's very kind." Came an authoritative bark from the gateway, followed by a rapid sequence of yaps, yeeps, and Priscilla's howling in full retreat. Joshua came wandering back with his hands in his sleeves. "Are you wounded, man?" said the monk. "What on earth did you do to her?" "Ruff," Brother Joshua repeated. "Ruff, ruff, ruff." Then explained, "Priscilla believes in werewolves. The yelping was hers. We can get past the gate now." The dog had vanished, but again Mrs. Grayles caught at the abbot's sleeve. "Only a minute more of your father, and I'll keep you no longer. It's little Rachel I wanted to see her about. There's the baptism and the christening to be thought of, and, well, I wish to ask you if you do the honor of—" "Mrs. Grayles," he put in gently, "go see your own parish priest. He should handle these matters, not I. I have no parish, only the abbey. Talk to Father Cello at St. Michael's. Our church doesn't even have a font. Women aren't permitted, except in the tribune. The Sisters' Chapel has a font, and women can—" "It's for Father Cello, not for me. It has to be recorded in your own parish. Only as an emergency. Could I—" I know that, but I saw Father Cello. I brought Rachel to his church, and the fool of a man would not touch her." "He refused to baptize Rachel?" "Aye, that he did, the fool of a man." "It's a priest you're talking of, Mrs. Grayles, and no fool, for I know him well. He must have his reasons for refusing. If you don't agree with his reasons, then see someone else, but not a monastic priest. Talk to the pastor at St. Maisie's, perhaps." "Aye, and that too have I done." She launched into what promised to be a prolonged account of her skirmishings on behalf of the unbaptized Rachel. The monks listened patiently at first, but while Joshua was watching her, he seized the abbot's arm above the elbow. His fingers gradually dug into Zerchi's arm until the abbot winced in pain and tore the fingers away with his free hand. "What are you doing?" he whispered, but then noticed the monk's expression. Joshua's eyes were fixed on the old woman as if she were a cockatrice. Zerchi followed his gaze, but saw nothing stranger than usual. Her extra head was half concealed by a sort of veil, but Brother Joshua had certainly seen that enough. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Grayles," Zerchi interrupted as soon as she fell short of breath. "I really must go now. I'll tell you what, I'll call Father Cello for you, but that's all I can do. We'll see you again, I'm sure. Thank your kindly, and beg your shrewdness for keeping your— Good night, Mrs. Grayles." They entered the gate and walked toward the refectory. Joshua thumped the heel of his hand against his temple several times as if to jar something back into place. "Why were you staring at her like that?" the abbot demanded. "I thought it rude." "Didn't you notice?" "Notice what?" "Then you didn't notice. Well, let it pass. But who is Rachel? Why won't they baptize the child? Is she the woman's daughter?" The abbot smiled without humor. That's what Mrs. Grayles contends, but there's some question as to whether Rachel is her daughter, her sister, or merely an excrescence growing out of her shoulder." "Rachel? Her other head?" Don't shout so. She'll hear you yet. And she wants it baptized? Oh, rather urgently, wouldn't you say? It seems to be an obsession. Joshua waved his arms. How do they settle such things? I don't know, and I don't want to know. I'm grateful to heaven that it's not up to me to figure it out. If it were a simple case of Siamese twins, it would be easy, but it isn't. The old-timers say Rachel wasn't there when Mrs. Grayles was born. A farmer's fable. Perhaps, but some are willing to tell it under oath. How many souls has an old lady with an extra head? A head that just grew? Things like that cause ulcers in high places, my son. Now, what was it you noticed? Why were you staring at her and trying to pinch my arm off like that? The monk was slow to answer. It smiled at me, he said at last. What smiled? Her extra, Rachel. She smiled. I thought she was going to wake up. The abbot stopped him in the refectory's entranceway and peered at him curiously. She smiled, the monk repeated, very earnestly. You imagined it. Yes, my lord. Then look like you imagined it. Brother Joshua tried. I can't, he admitted. The abbot dropped the old woman's coins in the poor box. Let's go on inside, he said. The new refectory was functional, chromium befixtured, acoustically tailored, and germicidally illuminated. Gone were the smoke-blackened stones, the tallow lamps, the wooden bowls, and cellar-ripened cheeses. Except for the cruciform seating arrangement and a rank of images along one wall, the place resembled an industrial lunchroom. Its atmosphere had changed, as had the atmosphere of the entire abbey. After ages of striving to preserve remnants of culture from a civilization long dead, the monks had watched the rise of a new and mightier civilization. The old tasks had been completed, new ones were found. The past was venerated and exhibited in glass cases, but it was no longer the present. The order conformed to the times, to an age of uranium and steel and flaring rocketry, amid the growl of heavy industry and the high, thin whine of star drive converters. The order conformed, at least in superficial ways. Accidenti ad eum, the reader intoned. The robed legion stood restlessly at their places during the reading. No food had yet appeared. The tables were bare of dishes. Supper had been deferred. The organism, the community whose cells were men, whose life had flowed through 70 generations, seemed tense tonight, seemed to sense a note amiss tonight, seemed aware through the connaturality of its membership of what had been told to only a few. The organism lived as a body, worshipped and worked as a body, and at times seemed dimly conscious as a mind that infused its members and whispered to itself and to another in the lingua prima, baby tongue of the species. Perhaps the tension was increased as much by faint snort-growl of practice rocketry from the distant anti-missile missile range as by the unexpected postponement of the meal. The abbot rapped for silence, then gestured his prior, Father Leahy, toward the lectern. The prior looked pained for a moment before speaking. We all regret the necessity, he said at last, of sometimes disturbing the quiet of contemplative life with news from the outside world. But we must remember, too, that we are here to pray for the world and its salvation, as for our own. Especially now, the world could use some praying for. He paused to glance at Xerxes. The abbot nodded. Lucifer is fallen, said the priest, and stopped. He stood there, looking down at the lectern, as if suddenly struck dumb. Xerxes arose. That is Brother Joshua's inference, by the way, he interposed. The Regency Council of the Atlantic Confederacy has said nothing to speak of. The dynasty has issued no statements. We know little more than we knew yesterday, except that the World Court is meeting in emergency session, and that the Defense Interior people are moving fast. There is a defense alert, and we will be affected, but don't be disturbed. Father? Thank you, Domni, said the prior, seeming to regain his voice as Dom Zerchi was seated again. Now, Reverend Father Abbot asked me to make the following announcements. First, for the next 3 days, we shall sing the little office of Our Lady before Matins, asking her intercession for peace. Second, general instructions for civil defense in the event of a space strike or missile attack alert are available on the table by the entrance. Everybody take one. If you've read it, read it again. Third, in the event that an attack warning is sounded, the following brothers are to report immediately to Old Abbey Courtyard for special instructions. If no attack warning comes, the same brothers will report there anyway day after tomorrow will report there anyway day after tomorrow morning, right after Matins and Lauds. Names: Brother Joshua, Christopher, Augustine, James, Samuel. The monks listened with quiet tension, betraying no emotion. There were 27 names in all, but no novices were among them. Some were eminent scholars. There were a janitor and a cook as well. At first hearing, one might assume that the names had been drawn from a box. By the time Father Leahy had finished the list, some of the brothers were eyeing each other rather curiously. And this same group will report to the dispensary for a complete physical examination tomorrow after Preem, the prior finished. He turned to look questioningly at Dom Zerchi. Domni? Yes, just one thing, said the abbot, approaching the lectern. Brothers, let us not assume that there is going to be war. Let's remind ourselves that Lucifer has been with us, this time, for nearly 2 centuries, and was dropped only twice in sizes smaller than Megaton. We all know what could happen if there's war. The genetic festering is still with us from the last time man tried to eradicate himself. Back then, in the time of St. Leibowitz, maybe they didn't know what would happen. Or perhaps they did know, but could not quite believe it until they tried it, like a child who knows what a loaded pistol is supposed to do, but who never pulled a trigger before. They had not yet seen 1 billion corpses. They had not yet seen the stillborn, the monstrous, the dehumanized, and the blind. They had not yet seen the madness and the murder and the blotting out of reason. Then they did it, and then they saw. Now, the princes, the presidents, the presidiums, now they know with dead certainty. They can know it by the children they beget and send to asylums for the deformed. They know it, and they've kept the peace. Not Christ's peace, certainly, but peace, until lately, with only 2 warlike incidents in as many centuries. Now they have the bitter certainty. My sons, they cannot do it again. Only a race of madmen could do it again. He stopped speaking. Someone was smiling. It was only a small smile, but in the midst of a sea of grave faces, it stood out like a dead fly in a bowl of cream. Dom Zerchi frowned. The old man kept on smiling wryly. He sat at the beggar's table with 3 other transient tramps, an old fellow with a bushy beard stained yellow about the chin. As a jacket, he wore a burlap bag with armholes. He continued to smile at Zerchi. He looked old as a rain-worn crag and a suitable candidate for a Mondi laving. Zerchi wondered if he were about to stand up and make an announcement to his hosts, or blow a ram's horn at them, perhaps. But that was only an illusion generated by the smile. He quickly dismissed the feeling that he had seen the old man before, somewhere. He concluded his remarks. On his way back to his place, he paused. The beggar nodded pleasantly at his host. Zerchi came nearer. Who are you, if I may ask? Have I seen you somewhere before? Latsoshemi. What? Latsoshemi, the beggar repeated. I don't quite... Call me Lazarus, then, said the old one, and chuckled. Dom Zerchi shook his head and moved on. Lazarus? There was in the region an old wives' tale to the effect that, but what a shoddy sort of myth that was, raised up by Christ, but still not a Christian, they said. and yet he could not escape the feeling that he had seen the old man somewhere before. "Let the bread be brought for blessing," he called, and the deferment of supper was at an end. After the prayers, the abbot glanced toward the beggar's table again. The old man was merely fanning his soup with a sort of basket hat. Xerxes dismissed it with a shrug, and the meal began in solemn silence. Compline, the church's night prayer, seemed especially profound that night. But Joshua slept badly afterwards. In a dream, he met Mrs. Grayles again. There was a surgeon who sharpened a knife, saying, "This deformity must be removed before it becomes malignant." And the Rachel face opened its eyes and tried to speak to Joshua, but he could hear her only faintly and understand her not at all. "Accurate am I, the exception," she seemed to be saying. "I commensurate, the deception, am." He could make nothing of it, but he tried to reach through to save her. There seemed to be a rubbery wall of glass in the way. He paused and tried to read her lips. I am the Immaculate Conception," came the dream whisper. He tried to tear his way through the rubbery glass to save her from the knife, but it was too late, and there was a great deal of blood afterwards. He awoke from the blasphemous nightmare with a shudder and prayed for a time, but as soon as he slept, there was Mrs. Grayles again. It was a troubled night, a night that belonged to Lucifer. It was the night of the Atlantic assault against the Asian space installations. In swift retaliation, an ancient city died. It's the end of chapter 25. Next is 26, and I'm just thinking. It'll take me a bit longer, but I'm thinking of reading 26 and 27 next time. Or maybe just 26, and then 27, 28, and then 29, 30. But either way, we'll figure it out, and we'll get there. Let me see how long the next one is. Let me just keep reading. I'm running out of time, though. Hang on. Yeah, it's a bit long. We'll pause here, and we'll continue later. Maybe I'll read twice this week to keep us moving, you know? But anyway, thanks for hanging. Let me check how long the one we just read was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it would take me like another 40 minutes to read the next chapter, so I gotta stop. But like I said, we might read more later this week to keep the story moving and go from there. Thanks as always for hanging out. And thanks again to Aindulmedir, as always. You can find his tunes on Spotify or Bandcamp. He's a great dude, and it's really nice of him to let me use his tunes. So go show him some love. Tell him you came from my channel or something. I don't know. Just give him some listens. He's nice. As always, thanks for hanging. If you got any questions or comments, shoot me an email. It's the same username as my YouTube and my Twitch at gmail.com. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday we'll hit the next chapter. All right, folks. I'll catch you next time. Hey, thanks, Wenda Boogie. It's good to see you. Take it easy and have a good one. All right, bye, folks.